We are going to go ahead and get started. Some people are still coming in the room, but we are going to go ahead and launch this fabulous session. So March is the month where we celebrate International Month of Women. And this is a really special session on the monthly sessions that Dr. Ryan Ross does every single month called Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. And he has assembled some pretty amazing women who have been breaking many different barriers within higher education and probably in other realms as well, as we'll learn about. But I just wanted to welcome all of you. I also want to put on everyone's calendar, the Global Minded Conference will be June 7th through 9th in Denver, where we'll see a lot of you. And we look forward to you bringing some of your students, especially some of your first gen students who can be part of our leadership program. And we'll have a lot of different business leaders, government leaders, educational leaders from all different backgrounds. So welcome. And I also, just before I turn it over to Dr. Ross, want to say that a big part of how things go well for women in our world is based on allies. And Dr. Ross is one of the best allies out there. We've known each other for maybe 20 years now. And it's just really a delight, Ryan, to work with you all the time. And I think no one group can do it for themselves, by themselves. And so I just want to say to you and to all of the many men who help women do extraordinary things, we appreciate you, and we look forward to improving the world more with you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ryan Ross, who is an incredible leader at the community college system. He's also an Aspen President's Fellow. He started an incredible youth leadership organization where he takes students around the country to different HBCUs and other kinds of colleges where they might be interested in attending. So thanks, Dr. Ross. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Carol. And first, thank you to all of you who are here. Dr. Ford, Dr. Simpson, Dr. Doran, Dr. Lindquist, thank you so much for allowing me to share space with you, and thank you for giving us your time. And I just want to let all the panelists know, to get this kind of panel together is really tough because these leaders are extremely busy doing many, many things. And so, and in the spirit of that, Dr. Ford has been asked to be in like 15 different places at one time. And so she has graciously given us some of her time, but she may have to step out early to go handle some business. And so if that happens, you'll kind of see her quietly sign off, but know that she will want to be here in spirit, but has to go do what presidents do. So that being said, I'm going to jump right in because I could literally have this conversation one-on-one with each of you for 2 or 3 hours, and we have 1 hour for the 4 of you. So we're just going to jump right in, and our introductions will be a part of your opening remarks, but we're just going to get started. And if we get to it, we have a few questions that have come from the community. And if we get there, we'll ask those. And other than that, we're going to jump right in. And the prompt to get us started is really your origin story. And so we'd like each of you to kind of spend some time talking about, what's your origin story, how you began your career. Did you ever think that you would be in this president's seat? And did you think you were ready? And most importantly, I think people want to know, as you were thinking through all of that, did you have to deal with that imposter syndrome? And so starting on my screen, I just want to start with Dr. Lindquist, and we're just going to go right on around, but feel free to jump in. This is informal, and we just like to have great conversation. Dr. Lindquist.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. How me takia dapi. Hey, shunka wakawi chakbiwia imakiapi. Hey, mini waka oyate adwati. Damakota. My name in Dakota is Star Horse Woman. I'm a member of the Spirit Lake Dakota tribe. My English name, Cynthia Lindquist, kind of speaks to my origin story, given that it's a beautiful Scandinavian name. And I pondered this question about origin and where do we all come from and how do we get to these places? And for me, my journey has been a little bit different. I never aspired to a presidency. I did not work in higher education. My formal background is health and tribal health systems, the Indian Health Service system. However, I was called by elders and by members of my community to come home to be a tribal college president, which I began in 2003. So I'm actually, this is my 20th year as a tribal community college president. Yeah. So first issue is like, oh, how did she last so long, right? But I believe I had great preparation to fill this role. I also truly believe in being Dakota. But I think it's what I understand in being Dakota Weah, a Dakota woman. I think it holds true for women. I think it holds true for humankind. Creator puts us where we're supposed to be. Creator brings us to the places we're supposed to be. Introduces us to many new friends and colleagues via these types of vehicles and that. And so though I never aspired to be a tribal college president, I had some great background and experience to do what I do and to leading my tribal college. If you've seen my little bio, I'm not quite sure which pieces you used of my bio, but in my 20 years, we have quadrupled physically the campus. And more importantly, we've doubled enrollment, we've doubled graduation, completion, persistence rates. And to me, as the educator side, I have data and I have good data about who we are, the people we serve and that. And part of that is accountability. Your other point about the beginning question, dealing with imposter syndrome. I somewhat feel that women tend to, this is us as women, we're always questioning, am I good enough? Did I do enough? Have I participated enough? Have I solved everybody's problems? I think that's somewhat of a natural thing as a woman, but truly we are. You know, and I don't like getting into the issue of male, female, better, and all this kind of stuff and whatever, but I think there's a natural inclination because women give life to be protective of ourselves, therefore our families, our communities, our networks, our colleagues, our friends, our students, you know, they end up into our circles, into our fold in that. And so in each of those realms, I think we're all really, really good at what we do. And we don't give ourselves enough acclaim for who we are, where we are, how we got to where we are in that. But I also believe that in this time and juncture of our society, we're in a different place than we've ever been. Still more work to do in that, but yeah, I'd like to hear from my sister colleagues.
Yeah, Dr. Ford.
So I am on the shorter end of my higher education presidency, entering into, I guess, my 8th month as president. I started this past summer, and it has been an amazing journey of learning and discovery. And I hope one day, Dr. Lindquist, I can look back and say that I too doubled our graduation rate and all. That would be amazing. So hats off to you, my sister. I grew up in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. If you can say Gahanna, if you say banana, you can say my hometown of Gahanna. It was not the bastion of diversity, but it was a wonderful place to grow up. My family was one of the few African-American families. I was used to being the only one. I was both in terms of race, and I loved to play soccer before it was popular where girls didn't play soccer. And I was used to being the only female. And so the idea of imposter syndrome is not something that I have struggled with, I would say. I think that my parents taught me about that I need to be the best that I can be, and I need to try and never stop trying and take advantage of opportunities, because if you try something and you get it, then you have a choice. If you never put your hat in the ring, You eliminate the opportunities, you will never know if you could have because you did not try. And so I try to give things my best and to work really hard. I think part of the origin story, though, for me and how I ended up at a historically Black college, both my parents graduated, were educated at historically Black colleges. My brother went to one, and having been one of the only, African-American young people growing up, I wanted to have that Black experience where I wouldn't be automatically immediately judged because I was Black identifying. And it created a place where I could explore my identity of what it means to be, a person, and particularly a Black person. And I have always had, I've always been inquisitive. So what landed me in higher education, and also what landed me in my vocation of journalism and communications, was I love to ask questions and being inquisitive. And so it's always a thirst to learn and to grow and to help others to learn and to grow. But I also am an eternal optimist, but I'm grounded in recognizing the challenges that we face. So I'm a realist, but when I see a challenge, my question is, how can I make it better? And that's where the optimism lies in me. And so instead of just reporting on the problems, I want to make situations better. And that's leaning into the optimism. So I went from teaching and learning in the classroom to becoming an administrator, because I wanted to solve every problem that I could find. And when I would sit in one role, I'd see a problem at a higher role. So it went from professor to chair to a dean, and then now to a president. But that search for inclusiveness and building community is something that I've wanted to have for other people, so that people don't feel shut out. And so that's my expertise, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what I research in the communications industry and higher ed. And that's the type of community I try to build, whether I'm at HBCUs or predominantly white institutions. And when I saw the opportunity to do what I love to do at an amazing place at Louisiana's oldest historically Black college, and to serve as a leader, I said, the worst thing that could happen is I get the job and I have to make a decision if I'm leaving my house in North Carolina and leaning into being a leader. So that's how I got here, from Gahanna, just like banana, Ohio.
Right on. Thank you. Dr. Doran.
Thank you. I long for those days when we don't have to make sure we're on mute, off mute. Where are we? Because even after year 3, I still feel like every once in a while, I forget. So I just love these stories, and building on these journeys, I think, is what we're encouraging our students to do as well, is to understand my journey is going to be different from everybody else's. And this is what we say to our students all the time. So I am the president of a women's college in Massachusetts. So our undergraduate population is women, and our graduate population is men and women. My own background is, my profession is I'm a lawyer, but I come from a great family of educators. My mother was a teacher, returned to school as an adult learner. So I love that, because that gives me insights, and is from my own personal experience about what it's like to try to be a mom, a wife, raising 3 kids, who I was one of them, as well as doing all these other things, which helps me understand our own adult learners here. My grandfather and great-grandfather were both superintendents of schools. So really a deep familial identity with education. And frankly, being a lawyer is a lot about education as well. Educating people around topics, educating people around strategies. My grandmother went to an all-women's college. My daughter went to an all-girls high school. So I have seen firsthand the power of a all-women's undergraduate education, which is one of the reasons I was so attracted to Bay Path University. one of the things I think a lot about, and actually it's really interesting because right now across the country, this topic of identity that you raised, Dr. Ford, in terms of, and Dr. Lindquist, what is your identity? How do you actualize that in your personal life and professional life? And right now in women's colleges, we're having a discussion, right? What does it mean to be inclusive? That's one of our core values. What does it mean to be a woman at a woman's education? And how do we think about multiple identities? And how do we think about how our students identify themselves? So it's just a great time in higher education. I feel that at Bay Path, we have a long history of innovation, but coming out of the pandemic, and I hesitate to say that because it's really not behind us yet, it's an opportunity for a rebirth, an opportunity in the midst of all of this change in higher education to think about who are we going to be as a 22nd century college. And I know we're still in the 21st century, but who are we going to be? What are the strengths we're going to bring to the table? What are the strengths our graduates are going to bring to the world? And we're really focused on careers. So we really see that strong intersection between leadership, empowerment, career, and somebody brought up pathways. So pathways. So thank you. It's thrilling to be here with all of you experts.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Simpson.
Well, it's definitely an honor to be here with all of my sister colleagues, and I'm loving hearing the stories and hearing all about your journey. You know, but when I think about my journey, I first have to think about or start with my ecosystem, which began very early in my life, and it was my Caribbean parents. And if you know anything about Caribbean parents, you are going to be raised with structure, drive, and commitment. And so I could always remember, you know, my mom always saying to me that never be afraid to speak up. Always use your voice. When you walk into a room, walk in with confidence. And so I've always had that opportunity to pretty much explore and discover new things as a child. And, you know, when I think back to my childhood, I always said to myself, I had this desire to fix things or make things better. Always looking at my friends around and saying, okay, what can I do to help you? You know, what can I do to make things better for you? And so I took those early childhood experiences, and it actually forged a path for me in my career, because I found myself drawn to community college. And that was intentional, because even when I think about my early professional career as an academic advisor, I wanted to help. I was looking at my students who were coming in and saying, what can I do to make things better for you? How can I improve your life? And I took those same basic principles and moved that up my tenure of positions and said to myself, I want to be able to bring people together. I want to take a look at systems and processes that are not working and solve problems. I'm curious. I have that why inside of me. When people tell me something, I'm like, but why? Why we're doing it this way? Tell me, what is the data telling us? And so I feel blessed because I got the opportunity to align my passion with my career path. And that's what I love about the work that I'm doing right now. And when I think about the imposter syndrome, it's really us. We're the ones in our heads with this imposter syndrome. We set these high expectations for ourselves as women. And sometimes, you know, we walk into a room, yes, we have confidence, but then we ask ourselves, should we be at the table? Did we give the right answers? You know, are people going to align themselves with us? Are they going to allow us to lead? And so for me, I've had all of those self-doubts throughout my career path. But what I always say to myself is, I don't let it control who I am. I go into every new role. I know that there's a challenge. And what I say to myself, it's important for me to grow and manage my fears, and make sure that my voice is being heard.
Thank you. Just continuing to just dive a little deeper. January, February, and March for me is like a Charles Dickens novel, right? It's the best of times and it's the worst of times, right? It's the best of times because there's this an explosion of culture. Everybody, at least for a couple of months, seems to be moving with grace and gratitude. The spirit of Dr. King is all over everyone. You know, Black history is being celebrated, even if it's just for 28 days. That's a whole nother conversation that I won't go into right now. And then we have Women's History and Leadership Month, right? And then we think about all the policies, all the changes to the amendments to move us in a direction where we can thrive. But I struggle with that because, you know, we have these rules, we have these policies, we have these things we put together, and they may or may not be working. And all that to say, we're about 104 years for women's suffrage. And I just want to get your thoughts on, you know, right now we're still in a lot of places experiencing pay inequity for women and a lot of barriers to thriving. And so just your thoughts, 103 years later, we're still kind of having these conversations. We're still trying to figure this out. Just how does that resonate with you? And just what are your thoughts on that? And kind of how are you and your roles, you know, supporting that and trying to ensure that we keep moving the dial further? Let's start with Dr. Ford.
I think one of the most important things is that we continue to have all people who are eligible to vote to get out there and to vote. Because you can have opinions of the world, express them on social media, what have you, but if you're not exercising the rights that are afforded to you, whether you like the candidates or not, it is your opportunity to engage in that political process and use those rights that were afforded. And if you don't like the candidates, then we need to encourage each other to run for office or to recruit someone who represents the viewpoints and ways that you want your local, state, and national government to the directions that they should go. But I think it's about being informed and it's about being engaged. At Dillard, we talk about cultivating leaders who live ethically, who think and communicate precisely, and who act courageously to make the world a better place. And I think cultivating those kind of leaders is what we need today, whether we're dealing with issues that are related to, female identifying people, or, people who are representing other identities that have been marginalized. We have to be willing to think critically about issues, knowing how to express ourselves in a precise way, and then being willing to be action in orientation. So even if the realm of influence that young people have, if they're not eligible to vote yet, they can express themselves, they can advocate, they can protest, they can do whatever they want to do to express themselves, but they have to think critically about the issues and just don't be protesting for the sake of protesting, but really have that critical thought that's at the table, and then be willing to stand by your convictions and act courageously on that. That's how women earn the right to vote. That's how African Americans earn the right to vote. That's how we were able to do things, is that we acted courageously, but we had to think first. And we had to then express ourselves in a clear and precise way. And then we're able to demonstrate that we're living ethically by acting courageously.
Yeah, Dr. Lindquist, let's come over to you.
Well, tough act to follow. When I pondered this question, my mind kind of went in a different direction, I guess, so to speak, in that I took it more personal about activism. And so then how are we teaching our young people activism? And yes, it's civic engagement. It's that power of vote and being engaged that way, but also just getting younger people to understand you cannot ever take things for granted. And I think a lot of things we're seeing happen politically, policy-wise in states speaks to that. So for me, we have to continue to be informed, to be literate in what those issues are about. And so that means research, investigating, listening, and having that discourse in different forms and formats. What is that? You know, what does it mean to me, and what's my place within all that? And then to really encourage our sons and daughters about continuing the fight. You know, I'm a product of the 1960s and 1970s, you know, that whole era, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to bring all that back. All that civil unrest, but for me, it was more that engagement, that activism, whatever it was in that. And I think it's more relevant now than ever. And part of that is also just coming off a pandemic. So the whole thing with technology, social media, and these platforms, and how are our students, how are our young people using these vehicles, and then not taking, again, just for granted, oh, it's the truth. Because, oh, I saw it on the news or someplace there that, no, it's really upon us to teach as educators that, no, please, you got to do more investigation. You have to do more research. Where is it coming from? Is it factual? Whose story is it? And who's telling that story? And how are those stories being told? And so just getting much more involved and engaged, you know, and anger is good, but then how do you redirect that into your passion to feel the activism in that? But again, it comes down to the thing that we're all about. We're educators. And so it's being better educated on those different levels and platforms in that, and then figuring out, oh, this is where I want to go. This is how I want to do it. And I think it speaks true for all of us.
Dr. Simpson, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think about all of us leading at our institutions and the roles that we play and the students' lives we get to impact. And so how do we use our institution to keep the messaging and to bring the educational awareness around the experiences of women? And so for me, it's engaging in the process, but also being part of the solution, creating spaces for this next generation to understand what it means to be in advocacy, to be in an advocacy role, and to advocate and to think critically. And how do we create spaces for this next generation to hold our politicians accountable? You know, race and gender continue to create divergent and uneven outcomes for women of all races. And when you think about the underrepresentation and the experiences of women, you know, throughout our professional careers, it doesn't stop. It's just continuing. So in addition to the public policy work that needs to happen, we also need to confront our cultural biases that continue to harm women, you know, and especially for me, women of color. You know, I do a lot of focus around that. I do a lot of conversations and talking to the next generation of women of color leaders. And I help them to understand that they can't devalue their work. And they can't confine themselves to just gender specific roles. You know, they have to step out of their comfort zone and make their voices be heard. And so for me, it's about shifting that cultural attitudes that has allowed us to create these systems that we need to dismantle, because these systems are only shortchanging us as women and hurting our families and not allowing us to remove the barriers and to thrive in these roles.
Dr. Doran.
Thank you. So I really want to build on everything here. My belief, and I think all of our beliefs, is education, access to education, equitable access to education, making sure that everyone has the opportunity, right, for a great educational experience leading to economic independence through a great career. I believe it is that combination. And so how do we do a better job of articulating the value of higher education? Because we know that's under attack right now, right? We hear that, you know, it's too expensive. It's not relevant. It's not market responsive. And it costs too much. I don't know if I said that already, but that obviously is a big topic. So as higher education thought leaders, how are we articulating that education is the pathway? It is the doorway through which, if our students will walk, and all learners will walk, then that road leads to economic independence, which in turn gives them the options, all the critical thinking, those skill sets that they will need to make sure that they live their most fulfilling lives and that we hold society accountable.
Thank you. Yeah, so I had this next question actually comes from some colleagues and some students, and I tried my best to thematically put it into one question. It's really about power, right? And so wanted to get some thoughts on how you all have leveraged and dealt with power structures early in your career versus now being in the CEO seat, and maybe some lessons you've learned on the way or some advice that others might benefit from as they're trying to navigate higher ed or corporate structures. Let's go back to Dr. Doran on this one to start here.
Thank you. So I give this advice to my students all the time. They always say to me, what do you wish you had done more of when you were our age, no matter what that age is? Because our students range from 17 to 70. It is taking advantage and leveraging mentors. I feel that is the most important success strategy. Talking to as many people as you can. Don't ever be afraid to say you don't know something. Also, don't ever be afraid to figure it out, right? Like, I don't know this, so who can help me? Who can help me develop these strategies and these pathways to success? So I believe if we could provide every learner, and we call them learners here, with a mentoring support system, then they could really accelerate their career goals. So I would say if I could, with a magic wand, implement a structural change, it would be to provide every student, every learner, no matter where they are, with a support system of mentors that gives them additional competence, but certainly the confidence to really move forward with whatever their chosen path is.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Simpson.
For me, when I think about early in my career, I remember having a mentor saying to me that none of us can control what another person may or may not think about us, but we can control our responses. And so that's what I focused on very early in my career, is how do I navigate power structures by making sure I had the right responses to allow for courageous conversations to happen, to allow for me to have a seat at the table, and for me to intentionally impact change. Later now in my career path, and we've all gone through different leadership academies and conferences and professional development, it's a little bit different now. And so we are navigating a variety of power structures that exists within our professional work. And it requires a different skill set to navigate those power structures. It requires, for me to be personally aware of all of the different stakeholders at my institution, and then develop tactics to help me effectively navigate the barriers and the challenges with those stakeholders. And so I am constantly asking myself the question around, what constitutes my power? What environment am I influencing? What environment am I strengthening? Or what environment am I in an authoritative role? And then what environment am I empowering or coaching? And so all of these various skill sets is what I have to bring to this role to navigate the power structures of my institution. And so for me, it's always important for me to embody within my leadership role that I influence, but not alienate people within this this role as president.
Thank you. Dr. Ford.
Yeah, I love, learning and growing from others in our past experiences, but in the concept of creating that constellation or support structure of mentoring that was mentioned. I like to break down mentors, though, sometimes into 3 categories or sometimes even 4. But the 3 that I oftentimes share is, in addition to like a mentor who can walk alongside you in your journey, we need to have coaches too. So coaches are someone who instruct you, like just like a coach, like in baseball or soccer. This is how you hold the bat. This is how you catch the ball, what have you. And they literally give you instruction on how to play the game. Coaches have helped me to learn how to navigate in my career to prepare for different administrative type roles and situations, and they've coached me through things. But then I've also had individuals who are like mentors, but they aren't coaching me. They're not telling me what to do. And they're not necessarily walking alongside of me where I'm bouncing ideas off of in the way that I do with a mentor who kind of walks alongside me. But they're actually what I would call sponsors. There are people who have watched me and observed me and found something special about me and who are opening up the door for me to walk through. But they expect me to have already received the mentoring coaching so that I am ready to take on that opportunity. And we have to have sponsors where we get to know people who have power and influence within our various sectors, be it higher ed or in our professional life, what have you, who might say, hey, you would be a good candidate for this. I'm going to nominate you for this organization that's invitation only, or I'm going to recommend you, because all of us get requests from executive search firms and people saying, I'm looking for talent in this space. Do you know anybody? It's important for us to become known. And I think sometimes women and others, men do this too, but oftentimes people from identities that have historically been marginalized in society, we don't like to toot our own horn. But I think we have to be known and own the things that we do really well, not in a braggart way, but in a confident way. And a willingness to say, I can do this. I'm excited about doing this next, and let people know where you see yourself in the future so that they might be willing, based upon your past performance and your desire of where you want to go, to be able to sponsor you to get to that next level. But they're not there to hold your hand and to coach you. They're not there to walk alongside you. They expect you to be excellent so they can open the door for you to walk through it. And so that's why I look at those roles a little bit differently. But it goes back to what Dr. Doran said, is that you have to have a constellation. You have to have a network of these different people. And those mentors, those coaches, those sponsors don't have to look like you. They don't have to be your same race. They don't have to be your same sexual orientation. They don't have to be your same gender. But you have the responsibility of being excellent at what you do and being open. And I know if it was Dr. Simpson or others that said to be open to listen and to learn from others. Because if we wait for a woman to be in the role that we want to aspire to as women, you might be waiting a long time, because God might be calling you, or the Creator might be calling you to be the first and to break down those doors or break those windows or what have you, and open it up for someone else. I hate to leave you all, but I'm going to have to jump off in a minute.
Dr. Lindquist.
Oh, gosh. What more can I add? I think I have to jump in to this point or question about structures and power in that. Really talking to you all as a tribal college president. And of course, my assumption is you all don't know what's a tribal college and what are those things and all that. There are 35 tribal colleges in the United States. We're in 15 states. We have, I think it's 60 or 70 campus sites within all those 16 states. We serve about 160,000 students. Most all of us are reservation based. Okay, so I love concepts of mentoring and coaching. Okay, but that takes programming to facilitate or to make it happen. And as now one of the elders of the tribal college presidencies, the tribal colleges and universities do exactly all of that because we have no choice. Our students, our people are so marginalized and so invisible in so many different ways. So when my student steps into my door, there's a whole bunch of other things. And it's such a brave step to come into the tribe's community college that I have to assure that we're nurturing, we're protective, we're not demeaning, we're whatever their hopes, aspirations are. And for most of my students, it's baby steps. It's baby steps. I think I want to take this class. Or grandma coming in and saying, could you teach me about computers? Because I have a grandson going to Afghanistan or whatever, and I need. And so it's accommodating all of that. And that's part of what the tribal college system is all about, is being able to have all of that within who we are. And so we have very dedicated faculty and staff. I don't have a counselor. I don't have mental health social workers on staff in that. And so, but by default, and because of relationship building, it's exactly what we do. But you know what? I also believe, and I also know it's not just tribal colleges, particularly the community college system and world, or all these other types of institutions out there. I know many have that same thought. And that same thing relative to, it's not just articulating and saying these things and that here, this is us and who we are and how we're going to do it. It's really demonstrating. And so we really try to emulate those values, which to me are Dakota, but they're indigenous, but they're also human values of respect, mutual respect, sharing, generosity, compassion, and that. And how do you play that out in an academic setting when, oh, I've got to pay attention to my graduation rate or my numbers and all of that. But in the tribal college world, we're really good at this very point about understanding system, structure, power, and where do we go? Who are our allies? Who are our partners? Who are going to help us, support us toward that work? And again, to me, that's the heart and soul of education.
Thank you. And that kind of leads into just that human nuance that you mentioned leads into my next question on just leadership in general. It's not easy leading an organization as the CEO in general, but now we're in this new terrain where we have CEOs leading, but now you're leading after the pandemic, and you've had a lot of changes because of it. And so just wanted to get some thoughts on just how does that look for you? How has it looked? What kinds of things are you thinking about differently in terms of your leadership and thought process, just as it shows up today now because of the pandemic or other kind of major changes in society? And we'll just jump in on this one. We just kind of want to volley this one around a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start out the conversation. Leading today is hard. I often joke with my friend circle, I don't know who wants to be a college president and why, because it's not an easy job at all. And so there's a new kind of skill set that's needed to lead today's institutions. We have to be leaders who are just not going to wait things out, because then you won't be relevant. We have to be risk tolerant and supportive of creativity and innovation. At the same time, we have to be effective facilitators and conveners and of all different types of conversations and discussions. We also have to be courageous decision makers. And don't forget, we have to be resilient and able to bounce forward very quickly. And so for me, what I have learned in leading today is that you have to have a combined understanding of how to make change happen in the academy, with a vision of how else the academy might be structured to be financially sustainable for the long haul, because that's important now, financial viability and sustainability of our institution. And then I've also learned that doing this work as a leader requires a power of inventiveness, stamina, along with good measures of fortitude and resiliency. And so it's a whole combination of things that we need to be thinking about as leaders to lead our institution, to empower, to coach, in order for our institutions to be successful. But then we also have to think about our culture and how do we create that culture of care at our institution so that they can also remain innovative in order for us to be viable and sustainable. So those are the things that I think about now in leading my institution.
Others?
I love that list, Dr. Simpson. I would add, you also need a healthy dose of humor. Because some things you expect to go one way and they go completely a different way. And you've got to maintain a little bit of a sense of humor to say it's going to be okay. Optimism is also critical, because if you're not optimistic as the leader, everyone else is watching you. And if you show up with a frown, everyone's going to say, uh-oh, right? Something's going on. I think the things that I have probably learned in a more powerful way, I would say coming out of the pandemic, is really how important distributed leadership is to make sure that everyone through the organization feels like they own the decisions, right? I don't think top-down decisions and that leadership style works anymore. I was never a fan of it, but it was a big part of prior leadership thinking. I don't think it's sustainable anymore. I think you really need a full community, and why wouldn't you? You've got, particularly in an academy, but in most businesses, you've got all these people that are very thoughtful and very smart and critically think about everything, and to not leverage all of their strengths is just a huge missed opportunity. I think the other area that I perhaps underestimated before the pandemic was really how important communication is. Communication in terms of building community, communication in terms of making sure everyone's got the same strategic priorities, that things are being implemented, that everyone's got the same view of timing. I would say that's a huge issue at an academy. Some people think 1 month is fast and other people think 1 month is slow. And so making sure that all the teams are aligned is really critical. And then the final thing I would say is building a bench, building a team, because we can't do it all ourselves. Even if we're resilient, even if we communicate, even if we have a sense of humor, even if we've got incredible powers of endurance, it takes more than us. And making sure we've got that right team that can go forth, it is really critical in my point of view. And it's not easy, is what I'm trying to say. It's not easy to make sure you've got, as Jim Collins would say, the right people on the bus in the right seats. But it's an important part of our work.
Yeah. Dr. Lindquist?
Oh, what can I say now after all these wonderful, wise words from women leaders? But for me, one of the most significant things in having survived pandemic, I guess, so to speak, and where we are, my sister colleagues have already made great points, and I think communication is the key, that unity. But I think the acknowledgement of resiliency in the human spirit, and our ability to really pivot, to jumpstart things and change. I mean, granted, we had to, but then as educators, what did we learn? And I think that's part of what we're all having, that discourse and different dialogues now, because as has been said, it's not done yet. It's not over. Things are different. It's not the same. So what is that? But the core of all of that, again, is the resiliency of human beings. And yes, prayer is significant to me, but I think for all of us, along with laughing, because you just have to, but then also then documenting those moments in time when, okay, how did we pivot? How did we do this? How did we do that? Lessons learned, and oh, wait, yeah, remember we tried that and kind of didn't go well, it didn't go this way, and so making sure we're capturing all those lessons learned. Which again, I think we all attempt to do in our own ways, in different ways, since, we're similar, but we're different.
So if I may build on that, Dr. Lindquist, one of the things that we've discovered, I think, post-pandemic is history does not always help us going forward. So, we are, working really hard on work from home policies. How is that going to work for different populations? How is hybrid going to work for our students? The data on certain programs might have been really strong pre-pandemic, but it's not strong now. And so a perfect example of that is we have this amazing mental health counseling program. Pre-pandemic, we offered it online and on ground, so in person as well as asynchronously. During the pandemic, of course, we only offered it online. Post-pandemic, and we have to find another word for that, we offered it on ground and online, but guess what? Nobody signed up for on ground. It doesn't work for their lifestyle anymore. And so acknowledging that the lives of our students have changed, as well as the lives of our professionals that work at the university, as well as our employers. So I raise this to say history does not always help us in terms of solving some of these leadership challenges.
So go ahead, Dr. Simpson.
I was just going to piggyback because Sandra, you made me start thinking about something, and one of the things I think we all are struggling with a little bit is choice is critical right now. And so we now have different groups of stakeholders who need different choices and who need different options and opportunities. And so within our institutions, we have to clearly figure out how to communicate, whether it's our flexible work. We have to figure out how to invest in fostering employee connectedness differently, because we have all of these cultures. Some of them are remote, some of them are in person. What's important, what's not important. And so it's making sure that the playing field is level. And so that our employees and our students can choose what is the right thing for them based on their lifestyles. That's the challenge ahead for us.
And I love that comment, Colleen, about making sure the playing field is level, because that speaks to your comment earlier on, Dr. Ross, around equity and around opportunities, right? Making sure that everyone has an opportunity. So back to leveling the playing field in every dimension, I think we would support.
Absolutely. And we are, and it's always happens, like right as we're getting warmed up and getting real good, we've got to wind down. We've only got a few moments left. And so so we probably have, this may be the last question. As higher education leaders, leading institutions right now, there's a lot of people who follow you, faculty, staff, community, et cetera. What should we be thinking about in terms of moving higher education forward, or what should we be hopeful for as relates to the future of higher education? Let's start with Dr. Doran on this one.
Thank you. I think the main focus needs to be the students. What do the students want? What do the students need? And how can we make sure that they are really prepared for the careers, they're looking to be, as we've talked about, fully participatory in society? How can we help them afford the education that we know will open doors for them to have a richer life and a brighter future? And so I think it is reminding ourselves that the focus always needs to be on, and this is the question we always try to answer and lead with, what is best for the students? And I will say there is no panacea of an answer, right? Every student potentially requires something different. But I think if that's our focus, I think we will be successful.
Thank you. Dr. Lindquist.
Adequate resources. One of my, I guess, challenges at this time coming off of pandemic mode is, so we've been providing tuition, books, and fees using the COVID relief funding. Where I live and where my college is located, we have double the US poverty rate. So we have endemic poverty, learned dependency, historical trauma. And I truly believe, because my students don't have to pay per se to come here to get an associate's degree, it's part of why I have record enrollment. And so now I'm trying to find resources to continue to do that for my students here at the local level, but then also for them to transfer out, because I need them to get terminal degrees.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be, oh, at this college, oh, they're transferring to this other college now for the bachelor's program, and they've got to apply differently or to different funding sources. I'm trying to figure out, if it's my student transferring, where are the resources that can go along with that student to get those terminal degrees to come back home to address. And for me, I need faculty. I mean, bottom line, people to go into education, let alone all the other disciplines and professions. And so money resourcing has to be the other really focus for all of us. Leveling that playing field.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Simpson.
You know, I totally agree that we have to focus on our students, because we have to meet our students where they are in order for them to be successful. And so for me, it's about, how do we use education as a path to empowerment for our students so that they can earn the credentials, whether it's a certificate or an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, you know, empower our students to be successful in the classroom and outside of the classroom.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like I said before, this conversation could go on for hours. It has been such an honor and a privilege to share space with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and testimony and just expertise and wisdom with us today. I really, really, really appreciate it. And, you know, pulling for you all and all that you're doing. And if I can ever be helpful, you know, all you got to do is call. And again, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna turn it back over to Global Minded and Carol for a few closing announcements.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And it's just been an honor to work with each of you today. And I will say that one of the things in June that makes the Global Minded Conference so special, June 7 through 9, is there are so many students represented where they get to be at the table with each of you. And it is just, you know, we've been doing this since 2015, and what has happened to those students and where they've gone in their careers. And some of them have decided to go on like you all and get their PhDs, and they will be the future leaders there. PhD Project is one of our sponsors. It's really amazing to see the agency that they have, and that all of our college campuses can look like that if we are co-creating the solutions and getting those students at least 4 or 5 times a year into your offices with provosts and other people like Dr. Ross. This is how that change transforms, and that's how they build their leadership skills. So we look forward to working with all of you, not just at our events, but also programs at your different campuses where we really can level the playing field with our Inclusive Success Network. So I also want to say it's just really refreshing. I think anyone in a position of leadership to really be authentic in the way that you can voice, you know, struggles, challenges, the kinds of things that you've authentically gone through. And we just appreciate all of you making time for that today. So thank you for everything. And Dr. Ross, thank you for always leading these amazing sessions. And next month is, I think, month where we're going to be focused on STEM, but we'll have some more incredible people at that time. But until then, thank you for all of you making time for this today. And Celeste will be sharing it tomorrow in our newsletter. And so that'll go out to, you know, 20-some thousand folks who read that. So thank you for everything, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.